Welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast. This is a show where we aim to educate, inspire and entertain through real life stories and interviews from people in the Scottish property community.
As always, thanks for listening and give us a follow on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to join us at our monthly networking events on the first Wednesday of every month. Tickets are available on our website. So without further ado, we'll just cut straight into this week's podcast.
Hi guys, and welcome to a special episode of the Scottish Property Podcast. Just with myself and Stephen here. We are celebrating, Stephen.
We are celebrating, Nick. We're celebrating our 200th episode.
Whoop, whoop.
And we completely messed up because we didn't even realise that we were approaching this milestone, didn't we? And hence why we're on Zoom.
Exactly, mate. So it's good to be back in my pants, to be honest with you. You know, now that we're recording in the studio these days, I have to smarten myself up and actually put some clothes on. But anyway, guys, this is the 200th episode. Give us some stats, Stephen. Where are we at?
We've almost hit 500,000 downloads. And you were looking at the countries earlier as well, like how many countries we actually reach with this podcast, which is quite crazy to think that it's like 153 countries have downloaded episodes of the Scottish Property Podcast.
152 countries all over the world, mate. We are going global with this podcast. So we've got people as far as Saudi Arabia, we've got Canada, we've got, oh God, all sorts going on here. Some really bizarre countries that I've hardly ever... I mean, we've got listeners in Congo and Ghana. So
And you're gonna give away a special prize at the end of the episode, aren't you, to celebrate it?
I thought you were doing the naked dance.
Oh, right. I thought you were going to special prize.
Right. Okay. No, guys, listen until the end because we are going to give a wee giveaway. So this is just something to thank the community. A wee special prize that we're going to give away at the end. So listen into that, and we'll tell you all about it.
So let's go back and think, mate. We started this podcast almost 4 years ago, the 27th of December 2019, a couple of months before we went into COVID. And how many episodes have we missed on our weekly episodes?
So we have, over that time, over those just short of 4 years, there's 203 weeks as of this week, and we have recorded 200 episodes. So we've only missed 3 weeks, mate. So I think we can get let off with 3 weeks. We're allowed a wee sick day, aren't we?
Shocking, mate. Shocking. I'm pretty sure that was actually due to both of us you having COVID and me having COVID or something around those times. So I'm pretty sure that the listeners can allow us that 3 weeks off in over 4 years almost.
There is a wee sense of me, because you're quite competitive as well. There's a wee sense of me a wee bit disappointed with that stat that we haven't showed up every single week. But anyway.
I'm rubbing off on you, mate. That disappoints me as well, actually. When I saw that, like that's disappointing.
Nearly 500,000 downloads over that time, and for such a small community. I mean, we're a country of only 5 million people, so I think we can give ourselves a wee pat in the back for that amount of downloads.
Yeah, God, who wants to listen to us talk about Scottish property? It's such a niche market. So to get these amount of downloads, it's quite good. But we did spot the opportunity when we discussed this prior to start, and we liked listening to property podcasts, but they were all very much dominated in the English space, and no one was doing anything Scottish related at all when it comes to the property market. And it is very much different from England. There's different strategies, different. The way the government's treating us is very much different the last couple of years as well. So there's a lot of unique things that make the Scottish property market different, which has obviously given us 200 episodes to talk about.
Absolutely. And people say, oh, you're not like running out of guests and stuff like that. You must be. Yes, but like, of course we get like guests. There's some guests that have been on 2 or 3 times, but because we're not getting them on like every week, it might be like 2 years ago that they were last on. So they've done so much because these people are so active in property and their developments and stuff like that, and how they're pivoting their strategies, mate, one of your favourite words, then there's always new stuff to talk about.
Speaking of guests, I mean, this is my favourite part of the podcast is getting the accountability and getting my market update from you, obviously once a month. But having the guests that we get on is definitely my favourite part. Like speaking to people that are so active in property and doing different strategies, just chatting people that is definitely my favourite thing. Have you got any ones that ping to mind over the last few years that stood out for you?
Well, I was having a think back, and I don't like to single out any episodes because they're all brilliant in their own ways. But I do have some, I am a fan of certain people that I follow on Instagram. One of the kind of highlights for me, the Brightstone property guys, I'll give them a shout out because I'm a huge fan of theirs, and they've been doing some amazing things. So it's Chris and Andy, and we had them in the studio. We've had them at the networking events at Glasgow as well. And in such a short space of time, they've just catapulted themselves into these kind of big projects. They're now taking on a big commercial building up in Falkirk, which I visited just the other week there. And I'm like, in only 3 years' time, they've done flips, they've done serviced apartments, they've done I think they did start off with a buy-to-let, but they've just done so much. And for me, to see somebody that just goes all out and just takes the action, that's really inspiring and gives me a real buzz when I see people like that act. What about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I love the different stories and different people's different backgrounds as well. And I really do, you know, I'm like, I really enjoy the ones that are going all out and making something happen in such a few short years and stuff like that, because we know it's possible to do it with conviction. But I also really like listening to the old school, the guys that we don't find on social media, that aren't out there, that you've managed to uncover quite a few. Bill Roddy, I think it was Spectrum Properties in Glasgow, like, does phenomenal developments. I love speaking to, you know, he's on a Zoom call from his villa in Portugal, showing what the other side's like. Guys like John Howard as well. When we interviewed him, you know, he's bought and sold over 10,000 properties over his 40-year career. Like, guys like that, I think that's quite fascinating. Guys that are still active after a long period of time, they can give you quite a lot of wisdom and a lot of value as well. So I really enjoy speaking to those guys as much as the young, or I'm saying young, hungry guys, the guys that are just in the industry that are going full steam ahead. Like, even like guys like the Rood Group guys, we had them on talking about how they'd bought a couple hundred properties in their first few years as well. Like, it's so good to speak to people like that. And characters, obviously, like, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like Craig Sullivan from Big Up the Grafters, you know,
Big up the grafters. I mean, we need to, because we've been focusing more on the studio stuff, and that obviously naturally brings in the local guests. We need to try and get some more kind of Instagram celebrities on as well. Do you know what I mean? So anybody that's got any suggestions, just drop us a DM.
I'm actually really enjoying your market updates as well. And I know this was something that would change, I think it was this year, because there were so many changes going on in the market. Like, it was changing month to month, that we thought it was kind of our duty and obligation, because of the listeners that we had, was to keep them right up to date, bang up to date. So I've actually really enjoyed them, because you know what I'm like, I don't pay attention to the news from month to month. So when I come in and actually get the news articles and the headlines from you, and we chat about our guests that we bring on, I find those episodes really fascinating. And the downloads also show that as well, because they're almost a lot of the most downloaded episodes, a lot of the market updates. So it shows that they are in demand.
Yeah, well, I think that's, people could just listen to a 30-minute episode and just get a summary of all the month's happenings, you know, the property market, where it's at, you know, the sales, the rental. And like you say, there's not really any other podcast that does that in the property space, because all of it's English pretty much. Do you know what I mean? And that, like, most of it doesn't apply up here in Scotland, because we all have our own set of rules and regulations, and, you know, the government approach and policies are very much different. So yeah, really been enjoying that, and we've been getting great feedback on it as well.
Absolutely. And speaking of downloads as well, I had to give a shout out. I just checked this morning who's the most downloaded episode of the interviews we've done, because there is quite a lot of higher up downloads on the educational content, like how to get started, and, you know, is buy to let dead, but we've done recently. That was one of the most downloaded ones. But the most downloaded episode from any guest was actually episode 168 with Davey Hutton.
Davey's some character, by the way, and I don't know what it is, but obviously he creates a bit of controversy as well, because he's so opinionated, and he doesn't really give a shit what anybody thinks of him. So he just says it how it is in his own head, which obviously creates the controversy, which obviously creates the interest, which creates the downloads. And we found that in our TikTok clips as well. Like, he went viral in a couple of TikTok clips, and, you know, obviously his look also helps, and that contributes to the appeal. You know, because, like, he says himself, he gets called a pirate and all the rest of it. What was it? A mixture of Johnny Depp and Jack Sparrow?
Yeah.
Sparrow and.
So speaking of guests like that, what kind of guests would you like to get on? Like, what type of guests? What would you like? What would you see the podcast going in the next couple of, next 100 episodes or 200 episodes?
Well, I would like to get more of those type of guests that you talked about, those ones who are doing big developments, who aren't on social media and sticking everything on Instagram, because they're probably a lot of high-level operators out there. You know, we've not even touched on, like, you know, the build-to-rent sector, which I see as a massive growth sector. These big developments are going up, 400, you know, apartments and stuff like that getting built in Glasgow. We need to get more of that sort of thing.
These are the ones we've asked before, we've spoken about in the past before, and it's quite hard to get them because they're not out there. We almost need this introduction. So if any of the listeners are listening and they know of someone that's building hotels, operating hotels, bigger developments, build to rents, yeah, someone that's maybe started off in buy-to-let space or flips and developments and gradually build up, we'd love to interview those type of people on the podcast.
Part of the issue with trying to get these type of guests is that usually it's very difficult to get direct to the actual person themselves, because usually you're dealing with like a PR team or something like that, or an assistant or something like that, you know. And a lot of the time, because it's very corporate and they're raising money from big, you know, hedge funds and pension funds and stuff like that, quite often it's quite difficult to get a good interview as well. Because, you know, if we get an independent guest in who runs their own business and that, they can say what they like. But if they're held accountable by some board of directors and stuff like that, then they're going to be very reserved in the information they give you as well. So potentially it could be quite dry, but I think it would be really interesting.
Yeah, true. No, true. The other side of the coin that I'd like to get on is it's probably a little bit more property professionals. Like guys, we were speaking about this recently. Like Sal does a great job with keeping letting agents and landlords up to date with the market updates and what's going on in the community. So to kind of appeal to their audience and their target market, there's probably a couple 100,000 landlords in Scotland. I think you got the stats before on this, and obviously if we're only getting a few thousand downloads a week, we're obviously not reaching that type of old school landlord that are maybe seen it coming. But how are they feeling right now? Are they changing? Are they bailing out? Are they selling their whole portfolio? Are they offloading half it? Like, be interesting to hear what their strategy is, the guys that have been at 25, 30 years and get their take on where it's going and changing.
Yeah, so what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to professionalize it a lot more. So you'll see me and Stephen. Next episode, we'll be wearing a wee shirt and tie, right? Okay. And we're going to cut out all the swearing as well. Because remember, somebody reached out to us at the start and said, guys, I'm not listening to your podcast because you swear.
I think they made a formal complaint about me.
I'm only kidding, guys. Listen, like, it wouldn't work if we weren't who we were. So
Yeah.
we just need to continue to be ourselves. If you don't like it because we swear, then I'm sorry, but that's just obviously just naturally sometimes it comes out.
I think we've had feedback a lot from the guests, because obviously we've been engaging with the community, especially the last couple of years since we kicked off the networking events, and a big shout out to the guys that help us co-host it as well, and the guest speakers that come along, plus people that attend these events. Like, there's a really good community. Everyone I go to is brilliant. Like, I really, really enjoy them. And we get good feedback as well from people attending these events, saying that that's what they like. They like the no bullshit approach. They like the fact that we're not trying to sell anything or sell our services. We're just shooting the shit, delivering an interview, asking the questions that people want to ask, and bring on the people that are going to share the right information that's current and doing stuff in the industry.
Well, I think, obviously, without bumming ourselves up too much, I think that's how it kind of works as well. Because obviously, you do have an education side to your business, but I kind of often lay in there with the kind of punch on the education side of things, because there is a lot of people out there that are just selling the dream and selling a lot of bullshit. I know you're not one of them, Stephen, right? But we have to kind of keep it real and not turn into a kind of sales funnel. So it is number one priority. It's about giving the listeners value and trying to let them get something out of the podcast without selling them a pitch. Obviously, people say, well, why do you do it then if you're not getting any benefit out of it? Of course we get benefit out of it, because naturally we get business coming through to our businesses naturally through just leads from people listening to podcasts and hearing about what we do. Obviously you spoke to somebody who wasn't even aware that I was a letting agent. That's my business. That's how I make my money. But I don't talk about it that much on the podcast, because that's not the aim of it. The aim of it is to give as much value as possible to our listeners.
Yeah, and I like the ethos. It was the ethos we started with this right at the beginning. I'm glad we've stuck to it almost 4 years later. Not here to sell, not here to talk about businesses. Yeah, we do mention it every now and again, but apart from that, it's trying to bring on the guests that people want to hear and the content that people want to listen to. And obviously, we're always welcoming the feedback from anyone who's got anything they want covered. We've got a fair bit of backlog that you can go back and listen to, but it's nice to keep the information fresh and relevant and up to date.
And saying that, when are we due into the studio to record some adverts for our own businesses again?
Next week.
We need to sponsor our own podcast. That's the problem, because this stuff doesn't come cheap, guys. Do you know what I mean? We've invested in the podcast as well. And people are thinking, because we charge £20 a ticket for our networking events, we're like, oh, those guys are like, pocketing all that money and stuff like that. They must be doing all right. No, all that money goes back into the podcast. Special shout out to Stevie Scott, who does all the production in the backgrounds as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Stevie and the guys of the team at G4 Studios in Wishaw, where we record the episodes as well.
Yeah, so we've upped the game in terms of getting the podcast into a video podcast on YouTube, and people are really enjoying that. I think a lot of people are going to YouTube now and watch on the big screen tellies. I know, shout out to Alex Walker. He likes to watch it on his big telly and post a wee picture now and again. So, I think it's good that way. We need to start getting hair and makeup department as well, mate. I mean, I know you've already had the hair transplant back from Turkey, do you know what I mean? But
teeth next, mate.
Turkey teeth. Okay, so what about part of this reason for doing this episode as well is to give a special, shout outs to the people around us and a sort of thank you as well as thanking the listeners. But we've also got a team that carries out the networking events across the country as well. So do you want to give a wee shout out to them?
Yeah, absolutely. The guys up in Aberdeen, Trish Crooks and Chris Minchin host that every month, and they got on to good guest speakers, really good guest speakers. I was up there last month as a guest speaker, helping the guys out, and it was great just to be back up there. And the guys in Dundee, Kizza Salimi and Neil Dimmick, do a fantastic job there. I've not been there for a few months, and Edinburgh's been getting a bit of a shake-up because we lost a couple of the hosts. So Linda Martin used to host it with Gary Wales. Gary Wales stepped away because he was focusing on other parts of his career, and as did Linda. So we've replaced him recently with Paul Dockery, and coming this month's going to be Barry Gray co-hosting with him. And then Glasgow, you've got the same team, a fantastic team that support you every month.
Yeah, we really just enjoying building the community, and it's a real people stay behind at the end in their wee groups and stuff like that. And sometimes we don't leave the venue until about 11 o'clock. But we've actually changed venue now. We're at the Village Hotel in Glasgow, and it actually gets us out a lot quicker because you only get 4 hours in the car park until you have to pay until you get a parking ticket. So most people are watching the clocks now. But yeah, as always, guys, get across to our website where you will find the tickets for all our events. It's dead easy. People reach out to us all the time and say, when's the next event? It's so easy. It's the first Wednesday of every month. How easy is that? Apart from we are changing it for January's event because it lands on the 3rd. So just watch out for that one.
I was outvoted with that, so we'll have to make it on the 10th of January. So yeah, but I think the guests have already been announced for most of the January venues. So yeah, I'm looking forward to them. The networking events is something I've always found quite uncomfortable going to networking events, but we've got an episode coming out next week with Paul Dockery, and he talks about how he only attended I think it was a Glasgow networking event in February, and how it's changed his perspective of how nervous he was going in and how he felt outside his comfort zone. So when that episode's come to next week, listen to that. Listen to the benefits that can get you just getting in the room with like-minded people and people that are doing what you want to do, or people that are doing similar to what you're doing. It's a great community.
Great stuff. So are we ready to get on to our giveaway now?
Go for it.
We just thought, how can we give back a little bit? And we thought, right, okay, we've got a lot of value to offer people, and quite often it's difficult for us when we're at networking events and stuff to speak to people because, we're either hosting them or speaking and all the rest of it. So we thought that we would come on here and offer a 1 hour free, almost like mentoring session, one-to-one call with myself and Stephen. Now, usually you pay big bucks for this, guys. This is going to be prime value you're going to get here. I mean, if you were to try and book in a call with Stephen, first of all, you wouldn't get a call with him because he'll blank your messages. But this is your chance, because the number of messages and DMs that we get, and it's always I just wanted to get into property and I want to pick your brains. Well, this is your opportunity to pick our brains for 1 hour.
Yeah, absolutely. 1 hour. You're like the other group, Nick, that's on Facebook, the ones that give away I'll meet you for a coffee and give away your free time. But yeah, usually free means absolute dog shit.
I don't know if I've got anything to give, because
you've got loads to give me. You've very experienced in property. So yeah, so if anybody wants to jump on a call with us, that's what we're offering as a free call. But we didn't want to leave out the more experienced people that don't give a shit what we have to say on an hour's call. So we're going to give away 2 prizes. We're going to give away that call for obviously beginners or people that may be reaching out and looking for a bit of a strategy call. If they want to ask any questions at all, how we get started, what strategies might suit them, the areas, what to invest in, how to raise finance, whatever question you may have, that's for it. The more experienced ones, you can still enter the competition and win a year's free attendance to any of the networking events throughout Scotland as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. And can we do the one-to-one mentoring session in your hot tub? Because that looks awesome. And I'll get in my Speedos just for you.
What, the ones you're in right now?
Right, so guys, you're probably thinking, how do I do this, right? So all you need to do is, obviously we're trying to build a YouTube channel, and all you need to do is make sure you subscribe. So click subscribe. You can hit that bell notification as well. I've always wanted to say that, just like the cool kids. So subscribe, hit the bell on YouTube. Make sure you leave a comment as well. So we need you to leave a comment and just put your name in the comment. And then what we will do is we'll go on there after, we'll set a time limit, say 2 weeks from the start of the launch of this podcast. And what we'll do is there's a wee tool you can go on, and it's a random selector. So it'll randomly select one of the comments. It'll pick out the name. We'll do a wee Instagram so that you can see us doing it, and we'll release it, and then you'll get notified basically, and we'll do the one-to-one call. You can talk to Stephen about obviously building a, what is it, a 10-figure property portfolio. And you can speak to me about anything, obviously business and you know, how about building business, you know, building teams, procedures, all that. I'm quite good on that stuff. Social media as well, if you need any advice on that. Anything you want to pick our brains about, we'll do it. All right?
Absolutely. Sounds great. I'm looking forward to that as well. And guys, if you could please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, share on your social media. It really helps us grow. I mean, we're speaking about the guests that we want to get on board. The more people that we have listening to it, and the bigger the podcast looks to them, the more chance we've actually got of getting these bigger guests on board. So if you could, that'd be your helping hand to us getting these guests that we want on.
Great. And here's to the next 200 episodes.
Yeah, mate. Thank you. Thank you for being such a great co-host that doesn't hold back the punches, says how it is, and keeps being consistently showing up for this.
Virtual handshake. Nice one. It's been a pleasure.
Right, guys. Thanks very much.
Thanks again for listening, guys. Speak to you soon.